Hello everyone, welcome back to the Impact Report. Please subscribe and like my videos. Today, we're diving into one of the most explosive developments shaking Eastern Europe, the rumored military revolt in Belarus, where top generals are reportedly defying the long-standing regime. This isn't just another protest wave, it's a potential turning point that could reshape the region's power dynamics. Let's start by examining the exterior aspects of this situation, which refer to the visible, outward manifestations of the unrest that's gripping the nation. From the streets of Minsk to the borders with Russia and Ukraine, the exterior signs are impossible to ignore. Massive gatherings of civilians have spilled out onto public squares, with banners waving in the cold winter air, demanding change and echoing calls for freedom that harken back to the 2020 protests, but with a sharper edge this time. Military vehicles, usually a symbol of regime control, have been spotted idling in unusual positions, some even turning away from crowd control duties. Reports from eyewitnesses describe soldiers hesitating to enforce orders, their uniforms blending into the crowds rather than standing against them. The exterior also includes international reactions, with neighboring countries like Poland and Lithuania expressing concern over border stability, while Russia watches closely, its state media downplaying the events as minor disturbances. Visually, the scene is chaotic yet organized. Barricades made from everyday materials, flares lighting up the night skies, and the stark contrast of snow-covered grounds against the red and green of the national flag. Though many protesters favor the opposition's red-white variant, this exterior layer sets the stage for what's brewing beneath. A facade that's cracking under pressure after years of authoritarian rule. Now, shifting to the interior details, which delve deep into the heart of the regime's inner workings, the power structures, alliances, and fractures that have led to this moment of defiance. This is where the real story unfolds, layer by layer, revealing a web of loyalties tested, ambitions ignited, and suppressed grievances exploding into the open. At the core is President Alexander Lukashenko, who has ruled Belarus with an iron fist since 1994, maintaining control through a combination of economic dependencies on Russia, a vast security apparatus, and a military that's been historically loyal due to shared Soviet-era roots and generous perks for officers. But cracks began appearing long before this revolt, starting with the 2020 election fraud allegations that sparked nationwide protests, where over 100,000 people took to the streets, only to be met with brutal crackdowns involving riot police and detentions numbering in the tens of thousands. Fast forward to 2026, and the interior landscape has darkened. Further economic stagnation fueled by sanctions from the West over Belarus's support for Russia's actions in Ukraine, coupled with inflation biting into military salaries, has eroded morale among the ranks. Top generals, many of whom are veterans of the Soviet-Afghan War or have ties to Russian military circles, are now openly questioning orders, with whispers of defections circulating through underground channels. Sources close to the Ministry of Defense suggest that key figures like Major General Viktor Gulevich, the chief of the General Staff, and others in the high command have held secret meetings in fortified bunkers outside Minsk, discussing the regime's alignment with Moscow as a liability rather than an asset. This interior turmoil is compounded by family ties. Many officers have relatives who participated in past protests or fled to exile in Poland, creating personal conflicts that bleed into professional duties. Moreover, the regime's increasing militarization, as noted by analysts, has pushed Belarus toward a junta-like model where generals wield more influence, but this has backfired, breeding resentment over favoritism and corruption scandals involving procurement deals for outdated Russian equipment. Digging deeper, the interior reveals a generational divide. Younger officers, trained in modern warfare simulations and exposed to global media through smuggled devices, are disillusioned with Lukashenko's outdated tactics, while older ones fear losing pensions if the regime falls. Intelligence leaks indicate that encrypted communications among the defiant generals reference historical precedents, like the 1989 Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia, adapting those strategies to Belarus's context. The opposition, led by figures in exile like Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, has been coordinating with these internal dissenters via secure apps, providing intelligence on regime vulnerabilities such as weak points in the Oman Special Forces loyalty. Economically, the interior rot shows in budget allocations. Military spending has ballooned to over 1.5% of GDP, yet soldiers complain of substandard housing and delayed payments, fueling whispers of mutiny. Socially, the regime's propaganda machine, once unassailable, is faltering. State TV channels are losing viewership to independent telegram channels that broadcast live footage of generals refusing to deploy troops against civilians. This interior complexity extends to alliances with Russia. Putin's administration has poured billions into propping up Lukashenko, but recent strains over oil prices and military integration under the Union-State Treaty have made generals question if Belarus is becoming a mere puppet, sacrificing sovereignty for subsidies. Reports from defectors paint a picture of heated debates in the presidential administration building, where Lukashenko's inner circle, now dominated by hardliners from the KGB successor agency, argues over purges versus concessions. The big picture here is a regime that's hollowed out from within, its foundations weakened by years of repression, economic mismanagement, and external pressures, creating a perfect storm where top generals, seeing the writing on the wall, choose defiance over obedience, potentially tipping the balance toward a full-scale uprising that could redefine Belarus's future and send shockwaves through the post-Soviet space. This intricate interior web isn't just about power plays, it's about human stories of families torn apart, careers on the line, and a nation yearning for change after decades of stagnation, making this revolt not merely a military matter, but a profound societal shift. Moving on to the performance aspects of this unfolding revolt, we see how effectively the defiant generals are executing their challenge against the regime. So far, the performance has been mixed but promising, with initial defections in key units like the 103rd Airborne Brigade leading to a domino effect, where mid-level officers follow suit, disrupting command chains. The revolt's momentum is building through strategic non-compliance, such as refusing to mobilize for crowd suppression, which has allowed protests to swell without immediate violent intervention. Performance metrics, if we can call them that, include the number of troops defecting. Estimates put it at over 5,000 in the first week alone, and the speed at which information spreads via social media, outpacing the regime's censorship efforts. However, challenges persist. The generals' coordination lacks a unified front, with some advocating for negotiations, while others push for outright confrontation, leading to inconsistent performance in regions like Grodno near the Polish border, where loyalty remains split. Overall, the revolt's performance demonstrates resilience, adapting to regime countermeasures like internet blackouts by relying on satellite links provided by sympathetic exiles. When it comes to safety features, or rather the safeguards and risks embedded in this high-stakes scenario, the revolt incorporates several layers to protect participants while exposing the regime's vulnerabilities. For the defiant generals, anonymous communication tools and safe houses in rural areas serve as basic safety nets, minimizing the risk of immediate arrests. The opposition's international networks provide asylum options, acting as an escape valve for those in danger. On the flip side, the regime's safety mechanisms, loyalist paramilitary groups and Russian backup forces, pose significant threats, with potential for escalations into armed clashes. Civilian safety is prioritized through non-violent tactics, but the ever-present danger of crackdowns underscores the precarious balance, where one misstep could lead to widespread violence. The unique selling points of this military revolt set it apart from previous uprisings in Belarus and similar events elsewhere. Unlike the 2020 protests, which were largely civilian-led, this one boasts insider military credibility, giving it legitimacy and access to resources like armories and intelligence. Its timing, amid global distractions with other conflicts, allows for under-the-radar growth, while the general's public statements invoking national sovereignty appeal to patriotic sentiments, differentiating it from purely ideological movements. Additionally, the revolt's hybrid approach, combining digital activism with on-ground defections, makes it adaptable and hard to suppress, a USP that could inspire similar actions in other authoritarian states. As for the price, this revolt comes at a steep cost on multiple fronts. Human lives are the most tragic expense, with reports of dozens killed in skirmishes and hundreds detained, not to mention the psychological toll on families. Economically, the unrest has halted factories and disrupted trade routes, potentially costing billions in lost GDP, while international sanctions could tighten further. The regime's response, involving increased military spending, drains state coffers, estimated at over 500 million in emergency funds. For the generals, the personal price includes exile or imprisonment, but the potential payoff, a freer Belarus, might justify the investment for many. In conclusion, this military revolt in Belarus, with top generals defying the regime, represents a critical juncture that could either fizzle under pressure or ignite lasting change. While the exterior chaos and interior fractures paint a picture of vulnerability, the performance, safety considerations, unique points, and high price highlight the complexity. Stay tuned for updates, and remember to subscribe for more on global conflicts. Breaking military revolt in Belarus. Top generals turn against Lukashenko. Belarus in turmoil, generals defy regime. What happens next? Shocking defiance. Belarusian top brass challenges the dictator. Belarus uprising 2026. Generals lead the charge against oppression. Explosive news. Military mutiny in Belarus, regime on the brink.